time for Overtime.
Stop what you're doing and listen.
In the world of sports, it's all about the playmakers in today's headlines, from locals to the pros, with interviews from local standouts and sports all-stars across the country that will have you talking.
3-2 pitch. Fastball belted deep right. Long gone.
Hear from coaches, the players, sports analysts, and broadcasters who are a part of the action every day. Overtime, now with Bert Ramin on ESPN 102.3 AM 1000 KSOO, Sioux Falls sports leader.
Getting ready to kick off hour number 2 of the program, Tuesday edition of Overtime. I'm your host, Bert Ramin. Track me down at any time on Twitter at BertESPN. You can always weigh into the show as well via the ESPN hotline. That number, you should have it saved in your phone by now, especially if you're a fan of winning things and talking sports. 605-362-3776. Still to come on today's program, SDSU women's basketball coach Aaron Johnston will swing by in roughly 20 minutes. NSIC ticket giveaway, emphasis on the giveaway. You don't have to answer trivia questions. You don't have to do anything embarrassing. But if you're looking to head out with the family to the NSIC tournament here in just a couple weeks, I got a hookup for you coming up later on this hour for the session number 1 and session number 2. Both of these sessions go on Saturday, March the 2nd. That is a week from this Saturday, and all I ask is that you use the tickets. I hope we can get as many people out there, support our local teams and everything in between out at the NSIC tournament at the Sanford Pentagon. I got some tickets available. I would love for you and your family to have some fun and use them out at the Sanford Pentagon. You give us a call later in the show when I call 4 callers, and I could hook you up with some tickets to session number 1 or session number 2 of this year's NSIC tournament from the Sanford Pentagon. Also still to come, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And let's dive in to your scorecard, where it was really good last night to be a fan of the Minnesota Wild. Other finals first, Chicago lost to Carolina in Raleigh 6-3. Dallas lost via shootout to Boston on the road 4-3. Toronto wins in St. Louis 4-2. And the Minnesota Wild rewrite their own record book in several ways last night. 2 different hat tricks, and they win the game in come-from-behind fashion over the best team statistically record-wise in the NHL right now in Vancouver. Kirill Kaprizov with the icing on the cake and goal number 10 last night for the Wild.
Here's Kaprizov again in the empty net. He scores! Unbelievable! It's a hat trick for Kaprizov with 1.9 seconds to go, and the Minnesota Wild have put up a 10 spot. They lead the Canucks 10-7. It's a franchise record for goals in a single game.
More on that later in the show. Minnesota 10-7 winners over Vancouver at home in St. Paul. New record for Minnesota, 26-23-6. That's not all that good, but based on where they were earlier in the season, it is phenomenal. They've won 4 of their last 5 and 8 of their last 11 games. Look out for the Minnesota Wild. I said in hour number 1, and I'll say it again. This team looking like a playoff team right now. Still a long ways to go until we get to the postseason. But the Minnesota Wild playing inspired hockey as of right now, 26-23-6 on the season. Other finals from last night of note, Detroit in overtime over Seattle on the road, 4-3. Winnipeg lost to Calgary on the road, 6-3. And tonight in the NHL, Minnesota Wild right back in action, visiting Winnipeg at 7 o'clock on ESPN+. Other games going on, the Avalanche are home to the Canucks. That is an 8 o'clock start also on ESPN+. College hockey, Augustana split this past weekend with Lake Superior State. They're back home the rest of the way for the regular season. 6 games remaining. Ticketing and more information, goaugie.com/hockey tickets. This weekend, Friday at 7, Saturday at 6. Augie is home to the University of Alaska Anchorage. Again, Friday at 7, Saturday at 6 for Augustana Viking hockey. NBA is done with the All-Star break, but we're waiting until Thursday for the season to resume. Some of the highlights coming up on Thursday. Thursday, Pistons at Pacers at 6, Suns at Mavericks at 6:30 on TNT. Other games of note, Celtics at the Bulls at 7, Wizards at Nuggets at 8, and Steph Curry and the Warriors home to the Lakers, a 9 o'clock start time on TNT. A lot was made with LeBron James's comments about his future, what kind of retirement he would like to have. Here's Steph Curry as to if he thinks about leaving the game.
Think about it all the time. But the thoughts stop because you got to get ready for the next game. And, there's a routine and a cycle that goes that you embrace the now. And eventually you'll get to a point where you'll wake up and whatever your body's telling you, whatever your mind's telling you, it's time. But I don't think I'm anywhere close to that.
Future Hall of Famer Steph Curry says he thinks about it all the time. Definitely not a guy that his skill set is deteriorating. I think he's got a nice long career as a spot player. When he does age out of a starting star role in a lineup, I don't think that's anytime soon, but he definitely could have a Ray Allen-esque back chapter of his career if he would like to have one as that awesome sixth man off the bench that can drain a three in a clutch moment. Steph Curry is good of a perimeter shooter as we have ever seen in the NBA. Speaking of hot shooting, speaking of good teams, how about Houston last night? 73-65 winners over a very strong Iowa State team. 73-65 the final, and Jamal Shed, a big reason why the Cougs notch another win.
7 to shoot. Shed off the dribble, straight on three. Got it. Jamal Shed, the straight on off the dribble three. 46-35 Houston, 12:53 to play.
Cougs win at 73-65. They're 23-3, and Iowa State picks up just their 6th loss of the season. Cyclones are 20-6. Elsewhere, Virginia and Virginia Tech. You would have told me this score yesterday, I would have said you're lying. 75-41. And the Hokies beat up on the Cavs. It's just loss number 7 on the year for Virginia. They went from ranked to unranked yesterday after a couple tough stretches within the last few weeks, but Virginia unranked and loses their first game since, 75-41 at the hands of their rival on the road in Blacksburg. Tonight in men's basketball, Iowa at Michigan State at 6 o'clock. Top-rated UConn is at 15th ranked Creighton down in Omaha, 7:30 on Fox Sports 1. 8 o'clock on ESPN, 11th rated Baylor is out in Utah battling BYU, 25th rated Cougars, and Maryland at Wisconsin from the Kohl Center in Madison. That's an 8 o'clock jump on Peacock. Women's basketball yesterday, Creighton was downed in UConn, 73-53. Huskies win at home. Notre Dame wins at Duke in Durham, 70-62. And Indiana goes on the road to Champaign, Illinois, and gets upset by the Illini, 86-66. The Hoosiers are 21-4. And tonight in women's basketball, a couple games close to home. Wisconsin at Minnesota, 6 o'clock on the Big Ten Network. And the later game on BTN, it's Northwestern at Nebraska. That is an 8 o'clock start time. NASCAR Daytona 500 wrapped up yesterday, and William Byron won his first ever Daytona 500 title and his 11th win overall in his young career.
Checkered flag is in the air, and William Byron has won the Daytona 500. William Byron out front when it mattered the most as they began crashing behind him. The winner of the 66th running of the Daytona 500 is William Byron. Unofficially, Alex Bowman is second. Willie B is going to celebrate in Victory Lane.
Here's what Willie B had to say in Victory Lane later on in the evening.
Just incredible. I mean, it's nice to be on SportsCenter. That's pretty cool. I grew up watching that. I'm a huge sports fan, so it's just an amazing day. It's going to take a while to set in.
William Byron wins his first ever Daytona 500, 11th win overall, and he and the rest of the NASCAR field gear up for week number 2, race number 2 in Atlanta, coming up on Sunday. That is a 2 o'clock broadcast start time, and you can watch it on Fox. Got to sprinkle in a little bit of NFL talk as well. There's a lot of drama today and throughout the week about the decisions and potential decisions of applying the franchise tag to certain players. There's some big names out there that feel like foregone conclusions, just maybe Cincinnati Bengals and wide receiver T. Higgins, and there's a few other names out there that make sense for the franchise tag this year. Couple of those players that are likely to not receive the franchise tag, Chris Jones and Mike Evans. Jeff Darlington saying about the Kansas City Chiefs that he would rather, if he were the Chiefs, have Mike Evans bolster the offensive side as a pass catcher than Chris Jones be back at defensive line.
If the Bucs can't lock him up and he does commit to going elsewhere, the Kansas City Chiefs should absolutely be pursuing Mike Evans. I understand the dynasty that is the Chiefs. I talked about how they can morph into many different things, but we should not forget the middle of the season. We should not forget the league-leading number of drops that the Chiefs faced. I don't know that it is sustainable to do what they did in this postseason. They've got to go get weapons, and Mike Evans should be absolutely at the top of their list. He would be a game changer for Patrick Mahomes.
Jeff, what would not be sustainable in that scenario is their salary cap. They got to take care of Chris Jones, L'Jarius Sneed. Oh, by the way, their left tackle, Donovan Smith, before we get to Mike Evans.
But think about
I would rather Mike Evans than Chris Jones. I would rather Mike Evans in this offense than Chris Jones on this defense.
I'd rather Chris Jones than Mike Evans personally, but it certainly makes a lot of sense for the Chiefs to go out and get some sort of veteran pass-catching help. We'll wait and see who it could potentially be. There's a lot of free agent wide receivers out there. Yesterday, we talked about the wealth of free agent running backs, the veterans out there, Derrick Henry, Austin Eckler, Josh Jacobs, Ezekiel Elliott, everyone in between. There's a lot of talent out there, veteran free agents, but the modern NFL starting to shift towards those draft picks, the youngsters, the rookie deals, as they should. The inflation of the salary cap continues to grow. The veterans in a little bit of a tough spot, but we'll wait and see. And it's tough to think also about the Kansas City Chiefs with Donovan Smith, L'Jarius Sneed, Chris Jones, and the potential of going out and getting somebody else. Kansas City, a lot of people would say, man, that team's got a really tough offseason ahead. I still think the Chiefs are the team to beat right now based on what they did this past season with all the uncertainty. And again, they still didn't have Tyreek Hill. Travis Kelce's a year older, faced all sorts of uncertainty, and they get back to the Super Bowl, win a couple big road playoff games, and are Super Bowl champions back-to-back for the first time in the NFL since we saw it in 2003 and in 2004. A lot of recognition coming in for area collegiate athletes. For the first time of his young career, freshman Caden Kirkman of Augustana was named the NSIC Player of the Week. Kirkman helped lead the Vikings to a weekend sweep, including a victory over 8th-rated MSU Moorhead. He had 24 points on 10 of 12 shooting that night. Augustana closes out the regular season on their home floor inside the Sanford Pentagon. Friday, Augie plays host to Northern State at 7:30. And Saturday, the Vikings play host to UMary, a projected start time of 5:30. South Dakota State sophomore Brooklyn Meyer was named the TicketSmarter Summit League Peak Performer of the Week for the third time this season. Yesterday, she averaged over 23 points, 7 rebounds, 2 assists, and 2 steals per game over this week's past games, leading South Dakota State to a 2-0 mark. Jackrabbits remain undefeated within the Summit League. And now on to some softball. South Dakota pitcher Clara Edwards was named the Summit League Peak Pitcher of the Week. And lastly, South Dakota State first baseman and DH Dawson Perry, baseball player, was honored on Monday as the first baseball TicketSmarter Summit League Peak Performer of the Week. The senior from Utah batted .583 with 3 homers in a 2-2 start for the Jackrabbits. And oh, by the way, they fended off New Mexico State 11-10 in Game 4 of that season-opening series. Jackrabbit baseball 2-2 to start the season. Continuing with your Reliabank headlines of the day, good news for Minnesota Timberwolves fans yesterday as guard Mike Conley has inked a 2-year, $21 million contract extension. The deal keeps Conley, the significant stabilizing presence on the Western Conference's current number 1 seed, out of summer free agency until the summer of 2026. Conley coming over in a trade with Utah back in February of 2023, instantly provided leadership and consistent point guard play to a team desperate for it. That's according to ESPN.com. Continuing with those headlines of the day, LA Angels star Mike Trout said he has no desire to be traded now and that he has encouraged Angels owner Art Moreno to sign at least one of the remaining high-profile free agents to help replace Shohei Ohtani. There's no replacing Ohtani, but they could at least try. On the first day of full squads around Major League Baseball returning to spring training, the 3-time AL MVP reaffirmed his commitment to the team, but left open the possibility of a deal in the future. Trout, whose $426.5 million contract with the Angels runs all the way through 2030, has a full no-trade clause in the contract. Trout says the easy way out is just to ask for a trade. There might be a time, maybe. I really haven't thought about this, but when I signed that contract, I'm loyal. I want to win a championship here. The overall picture of winning a championship or getting to the playoffs here is a bigger satisfaction than bailing out and just taking an easy way out. Amen to Mike Trout. I hope that the Angels can win a championship with him. I would say it's near impossible based on everything we've seen over the last couple of years and the fact that they just lost the best player in recent baseball history to free agency because the Angels weren't going as all in as he would have liked them to. Ohtani heads over to the LA Dodgers instead. Mike Trout reaffirming the commitment to the Angels. That's pretty awesome, and bravo for that, although I feel like it might be all for naught as far as championship dreams go for Mike Trout there with the Angels. The goal was obvious for William Byron yesterday, put the number 24 Chevy in victory lane in the 2024 Daytona 500 to launch Hendrick Motorsports' 40th anniversary season. Mission accomplished, even if Byron had to compete in agonizing final lap under caution around Daytona International Speedway, awaiting the winner to be declared. Did we win it? Did we win it? Byron kept asking over his radio. The emotion he heard over his radio from crew chief Rudy Fugel confirmed that Byron had just won the biggest race of his young career. Byron snapped Hendrick Motorsports' 9-race Daytona 500 losing streak yesterday in the rain-delayed Great American Race. Unfortunately, it ends in caution, but sometimes it has to end that way in NASCAR. That's the way the first race of the season goes. But congratulations to William Byron, win number 1 at the Daytona 500. And it kicks off a historic season for Hendrick Motorsports, the 40th anniversary of that race team. Next week's race coming up in Atlanta on Sunday. That is a Fox broadcast at 2 o'clock Central Time as William Byron looks to start out the season and going back-to-back with victory. Wouldn't that be something for the young North Carolina native? Those are your Reliabank headlines of the day. When we come back, let's talk South Dakota State women's basketball. Head coach Aaron Johnston joins us next on this Tuesday edition of Overtime.
Sometimes humorous, sometimes serious, but most of the time entertaining. This is Overtime with Burt Ramin on ESPN 102.3 and AM 1000 KSOO, Sioux Falls sports leader.
Welcome back. It's the Tuesday edition of Overtime right here on ESPN 102.3 AM 1000 KSOO. Another great season of Summit League women's basketball. Undefeated in the Summit League right now are the South Dakota State Jackrabbit women. Joining us now on the ESPN hotline, longtime coach up in Brookings, Aaron Johnston. Coach, welcome back to the show. How you doing this week?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
It's great to talk ball with you as always, Coach. Let's talk about the recent stretch for your team. Overall, things have been aces for you guys, undefeated within the Summit League, but always competitive, always fun. We're excited to see you in person here in Sioux Falls soon. But the recent stretch, going back to USD in that Interstate Series a couple weekends ago, Oral Roberts, Kansas City, and Omaha, what have been some of the common denominators for your team's recent success?
You know, we've really just played well. I wouldn't say it's anything over the top, one particular part or category. We've shot the ball well from the field at times. That's been important. We've made threes. Our inside game has been consistent. If there's been one part of our team, I think that's shown up really throughout the year has been just our consistency defensively. We're not out there trying to turn people over or, force a ton of possessions, run up and down. So it's kind of, I guess, boring to maybe even watch, but just really solid defensively, usually in the right spots, make people take some tough shots. We've had some individuals really play well. Brooklyn Meyer, I think, has put together a phenomenal year. I think she's really proven to be, one of, if not the very best player in our conference. She just does so much for us inside offensively and defensively. And as only a sophomore, she's got a lot of really good basketball in front of her. And Paige Meyer, our point guard, has had another fantastic year where she's finally healthy and able to kind of play the way she would like to play. So we definitely have had some individuals stand out, but our team has just continued to play really consistent.
Coach, I wanted to ask you about this because, of course, before the season even began, you guys got hit with some really tough injury news to a couple marquee players. And throughout the season, you've dealt with even more injuries. I know it's never a good scenario when that happens. It's very challenging and taxing on the roster, on the confidence, and on across everybody from the coaches to the players to the staff. How pleased are you, though, the fact that you guys have put together such a great season in response to these injuries? And a lot of people necessarily wouldn't have counted you out, but definitely would have doubted what you've been able to put together. And the girls have responded in such a huge way. I think it just says a lot about the resilience of your group.
Yeah, I think that's what I would say. I think you said it really well. I think it's a great indicator of the kind of people we have in our program. Certainly our players deserve the majority of the credit. And not just the players playing, but everybody. Our players that are going through their rehab and their recovery have been fantastic. They've stayed really connected to the team. They've offered a lot of leadership. Our players on the floor have stayed really connected to the group that's rehabbing. There's definitely different roles we have right now on the team, but everybody's just doing a fantastic job of leading. I think Tori Nelson, as a senior, has been a huge steadying force for our team. She's just so composed and so mature. She really doesn't get too up or down. I think our team responds really well to her. We've had a lot of players step up and now play in much more significant roles. Mesa Byam's a great example. She comes off of a great weekend here at home. Now she's moved into the starting lineup after Maddie Vlaston went down. Before Maddie went down, she had proven to be one of the best three-point shooting forwards in our league and was a difference maker there. She grew into a starting role. Maddie Mathewitz and Jenna Hopp and that group, Ellie Colbeck, everybody's played really well for us this year. So I think that resiliency that you talked about, that connectedness that we have, but I still remind people we're missing a lot of really good players, starters, people that would start for pretty much any team in our league. But at the same point, we still have a lot of talent. Like, this team is not lack in ability and players. We're not as deep as we usually are, but the people on the floor are still incredibly talented, and that's a big part of why they're having success.
South Dakota State Jackrabbit women's basketball, overall record 20-5, 12-0. Still perfect within the Summit League. Upcoming schedule at Denver and at St. Thomas. Those games coming up Thursday and Saturday. And the remainder of the regular season, we got 4 games total left here, Coach. It's Leap Day basketball against North Dakota on Thursday, the February 29th. And then the regular season finale is North Dakota State for Senior Day coming up on Saturday, March the 2nd. When it comes to the challenges we talked about with the injuries and the opportunity for other players, what kind of growth have you seen from the younger players on the roster all the way down to the youngest players on up to the players that are seeing the floor?
Yeah, I think growth is a good word. Talent is definitely there. If you're going to be a good player at this level, which is a top 50-ish program in Division I, you have to have talent. Like, you can't just be a decent player. You've got to be pretty good. But then you also have to make the most of your opportunity, and that's really where that growth piece comes in. Just because we had opportunities doesn't mean everyone just automatically plays well. They really have to absorb new information. They have to handle new pressure. They have to handle new expectations. They have to perform well during that. And so that growth has happened where talent and opportunity have come together, and we've had people fill into those spaces. Not only did we have injuries this year, but last year we graduated 2 of our all-time greats, including Maya Selland and Peyton Burkhart. Drew Gilton was only with us for 1 year, but she was a phenomenal elite point guard.
Yep.
And then you lose a couple of players too. So we almost turned over an entire roster in some regards of starters and role players and who's going to score. But you look at how Brooklyn and Paige and Maddie and now Mesa and Ellie, everybody has stepped into those roles. They've had tremendous growth with their confidence, with their belief, with their understanding of what we want to try and get done. And then their talent has been there. So that's been a fun part. This year, it kind of stands out. But that word growth hopefully is happening every year. Hopefully every year from beginning to end, we're moving players forward and helping them grow in their roles. So this year it probably took on a little different meaning on the outside. But on the inside, I guess that's our job every single day, and we're always trying to do that. And this year is no different.
Rock solid program up there in Brookings. The record right now, 20-5, 12-0, undefeated in Summit League play. We're talking with South Dakota State women's basketball head coach Aaron Johnston here on the Tuesday edition of Overtime. Coach, when it comes to the games in the immediate future, Thursday at Denver, Saturday at St. Thomas, what are a few things that stand out about those two teams as your team continues to stay undefeated?
Well, they're both really good offensively. Both have really good perimeter players. They can shoot it. They can get to the basket. So there's some similarities there. Maybe different plan, but their talents are similar. And honestly, last year at both places, we really struggled. We had to fight it out to the very end at both games. So we know that both of those places are challenging places to play. They've each had some good wins this year. They've beaten some of the top teams in our league. So both very capable. But we'll have to defend the three-point line well against both of those teams. We'll have to defend their perimeter penetration with both of those teams. You got to kind of handle whatever comes up in travel. Hopefully that all goes smooth. And short turnaround, getting from Denver to the Twin Cities from Thursday to Saturday early afternoon games. So those basic things. But I like how our team has played. Doesn't mean we'll guarantee to go out and play well in the next two games, but we're in a good place, and everybody has a good feel for what we're trying to get done. Now it's just a matter of trying to go out and play really well.
And lastly, Coach, before we let you go, always appreciate the time. We're looking forward to seeing you in person here in Sioux Falls at the Summit League tournament in just a few weeks before too long. You mentioned early off the jump, we were talking about recent play, you were talking about strengths, and just the overall defense of your team comes to mind as a big strength. Not the flashy takeaways, not the overly aggressive defense, but it's pretty stark, the fact that your team just allows way less points than anybody else in conference right now. I wanted to talk about the offense, though, and the overall resume of your team. If you're highlighting some things that you guys do really well, whether it's passing, whether it's ball movement, whether it's anything across the board, what are a few things on offense that you've been very pleased with as a unit this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a we offense rather than a me offense. I think we've always been a team that values how we pass the ball, share the ball, find open shooters, and this year's team's done a great job with it. You know, there's really nobody out there trying to do their own thing or just a volume kind of shooter, and we're able to play really well as a unit. And when other teams have to try and stop us, we have some elite players. I mentioned like a Brooklyn, for instance. She's coming off another Summit League peak performer, player of the week kind of weekend. So you have some of the best players in the league, but around them, they've got some really good players too. And to watch us play, it's really hard to slow us down because we do share the ball. We do spread the floor. We do think about it as a we offense rather than an individual offense. And I think that's certainly fun to coach, but also fun to watch, fun to play in. And I think that's really helped our team excel.
It's awfully fun to cover as well. South Dakota State women's basketball head coach Aaron Johnston, our guest. Coach, we always appreciate the time. Looking forward to seeing you in a couple weeks here in Sioux Falls. Thanks a bunch, and we'll do it again soon.
Okay, thank you.
All right, South Dakota State women's basketball head coach Aaron Johnston. Again, the record 20-5, 12-0 within the Summit League, and the remaining schedule for you Jackrabbit fans out there: at Denver Thursday. They visit St. Thomas on Saturday at 1 o'clock. Denver game gets started, by the way, local time at 7. And then the remaining games of the season are both at home. They're home to North Dakota a week from Thursday, and then home to North Dakota State a week from Saturday, 2 o'clock for Senior Day up in Brookings at Frost Arena. And a reminder, the Summit League Championship, Summit League Tournament, come here to Sioux Falls, Denny Sanford Premier Center. They run Friday, March the 8th through Tuesday, March the 12th. Special thanks to head coach Aaron Johnston for swinging by today on this Tuesday edition of Overtime. We're going to go to break, and when we come back, we'll update you on the latest standings, where our local teams stand in the NSIC and the Summit League. And later on next segment, I'll hook you up with some tickets to the NSIC tournament. I don't have Summit League tickets yet, but you will be the first to know when they come into my door here. 605-362-3776 will be the number to call. I'll let you know when, and hopefully hook you up with some NSIC tournaments coming up here soon on the show. We take the break. The Tuesday edition of Overtime continues next, right here on your Sioux Falls Sports Leader.
You want more of Overtime? Podcast, free with the app or online at ESPN Sioux Falls. Overtime with Burt Ramin on ESPN 102.3 and AM 1000 KSOO.
Right back with you on this Tuesday edition of Overtime, Tuesday, February the 20th. And right around the corner here in the 605, we got the Summit League tournament. And before that, it's the NSIC basketball tournaments. NSIC tournaments will range from the 2nd through the 5th at the Sanford Pentagon here in Sioux Falls. 12-team tournament. First-round games will be played on Wednesday, the 28th, on campus. The top 4 seeds on each side, men's and women's, will receive a first-round bye, and we'll await the rest of the field joining them Saturday to Tuesday, March the 2nd through the 5th at the Sanford Pentagon. That is for the NSIC tournament. For the Summit League tournament, that ranges Friday through Tuesday, March 8th through the 12th at the Denny Sanford Premier Center. All 9 Summit League teams will make an appearance, and hopefully play-in game leads to much, much more, potentially for USD. They're not locked into the play-in right now, but we'll update you on the men's side, the women's side standings for both respective conferences right now on the show. First things first for the Summit League. We'll start with the Summit League men's side. North Dakota is the conference leader right now. 9-4 is their record in conference. Overall, they're 17-11. They're just one game better right now in conference than South Dakota State. They've also played one more game. So SDSU is the 2 seed right now with a record of 8-4. They're followed by 7-5 St. Thomas and 2 teams at 6-6 with North Dakota State and UMKC. Making your way down, it's Denver, Omaha, Oral Roberts, and South Dakota. South Dakota right now is 3 games out of the play-in, getting out of the play-in game. Oral Roberts is 2 games better than the Yotes, and Omaha, the first team out of the play-in, better known as the 7 seed, is 6-7. So USD certainly with some work to do, but as we've seen over the last few weeks during this season, both for USD and otherwise, anybody can beat anybody on this men's side, and USD 3-9 right now, 10-17 overall. Still a pretty darn good basketball team. A big opportunity to score the basketball in several different players' hands. USD 3-9, 10-17. They're currently the 9 seed, and they're not locked into the play-in, but it looks like they will be playing in the play-in come the start of the Summit League tournament. On the women's side, we just got done talking with head coach Aaron Johnston of SDSU. They're undefeated, 12-0, and most people know that right now. North Dakota State is 2nd in conference at 10-2, Oral Roberts 3rd at 8-5, and South Dakota, who still has ORU on the road on Saturday on their schedule, is just 1 game back of Oral Roberts. They've also played 1 less game with an earlier bye this season. St. Thomas is right behind USD at 6-6. Then you got North Dakota, Denver, UMKC, and Omaha, and there's a big line of demarcation between the top 2 teams, South Dakota State and North Dakota State. That middle pack featuring ORU, USD, St. Thomas, and North Dakota. And then the bottom 3, you got Denver, UMKC, and Omaha. Both the Roos and the Mavs have just won 2 games apiece within the conference this year. They're going to be in that play-in contest more than likely, although Denver's still within reach for that contest, as is North Dakota and St. Thomas, but more than likely the play-in for the Summit League women's side will be UMKC facing off with Omaha. As for the NSIC basketball tournaments, again, the first round games we played on Wednesday the 28th on the campus of the higher seed. And then the final 8 will make their way to the Sanford Pentagon Tuesday, March 2nd through the 5th. Here are the latest standings across the board. And again, 12-team basketball tournament, quarterfinals, semis, and championships will take place Saturday till Tuesday on the 2nd through the 5th at the Sanford Pentagon in Sioux Falls. And those first-round games will be played on Wednesday the 28th. So here are the standings right now when it comes to the overall conference. We'll start on the men's side. Minnesota State is the best team in conference right now, record-wise at 18-2. The Mavericks are 2 games better than Duluth and also 2 games better than Moorhead right now. Duluth is 17-4, Moorhead 16-4. Minot State's been really good this year, 14-6. Then you got Southwest Minnesota State and Winona just ahead of the Augustana Vikings. And Augustana right now is the 7th place team in the conference, just 2 games better than Bemidji and 2 games better than the USF Cougars. Down the line, you got St. Cloud State, Northern State, Wayne State College, Concordia St. Paul, Crookston, and U Mary to round out the men's basketball standings. And on the women's side, Minnesota State Mankato's been the banner carrier this year. They're 21-5, 18-2 in conference, 3 games better than Northern State, as well as Concordia St. Paul. Making your way down the standings, St. Cloud State, UMary, Southwest Minnesota State. You got Duluth, Moorhead, Winona State, and Crookston before you get down to Sioux Falls at 6-14. Also with that identical record, Minot State and Augustana. All of our area teams, USF and Augustana, both tied at 6-14 in conference play. And rounding out the conference right now, Wayne State and Bemidji State. So it looks as though Augustana right now will be playing in that early play-in at the home of the opposite higher seed. But again, things could change with just a few games remaining in this regular season. And if you would like to head out to the Sanford Pentagon, I've got 10 tickets to both sessions, Session 1 and Session 2. Session 1 is the men for the upcoming NSIC tournament. This will be Saturday, March the 2nd at 11 a.m. Also will include the game at 1:30 in the afternoon. If you can go and you would like to go, I can hook you up with some free tickets right now. I've got 10 tickets. I'll give them out in packs of 2 or 4, depending upon who you'd like to go with. That number to call if you'd like to go to the NSIC tournament at the Pentagon, 605-362-3776. Again, 605-362-3776. I've also got Session 2 tickets for the women that night, Saturday night, March the 2nd. It's at 4:30 and 7 o'clock projected start times there. I got 10 tickets for each. So if you and yours would like to go out, I can give them away in quantities of 4 and quantities of 2. Just dial me up, 605-362-3776. It is as easy as that. You don't got to win anything. You don't got to answer a wacky trivia question. Just dial me up if you'd like to go out to the NSIC tournament. Again, that number, 605-362-3776. When we come back, we'll wrap up this Tuesday edition of Overtime by delivering the goods with the good, the bad, and the ugly. That's next on this Tuesday edition of Overtime right here on ESPN 102.3 AM 1000 KSOO.
Stream us online, stream us on the app. Streaming now. Overtime with Burt Ramin on ESPN 102.3 and AM 1000 KSOO. Sioux Falls sports leader.
Burt Ramin back here with you on this Tuesday edition of Overtime. Thanks for tuning us in as always. ESPN 102.3 AM 1000 KSOO. If you ever miss any of the show, podcast links are easily available, ESPNSiouxFalls.com or on that ESPN Sioux Falls app. It's a free download at the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store. There's a lot of good today in today's edition of The Good, the Bad, the Ugly, and that's how we'll finish up today's program.
Many days there are those who can be called a problem child. You know the ones. They have a tendency to display an ugly side. They have their whining moments. Some display an outright bad side of themselves. And then there are those who stand out in a good way. Well, here they are. The good, the bad, and the ugly.
We'll start out with the good news as always, and it's good news for the Pac-12, better known lately as the Pac-2. The Pac-12 has appointed Teresa Gold, the league's deputy commissioner, as the new commissioner beginning on March the 1st. Gold, who takes over for the departed George Kliavkoff, becomes the first woman to be commissioner of a Power 5 conference. She was appointed by the presidents of Washington State and Oregon State, who make up the Pac-12 board, because of the impending departures of the league's 6 other members to the Big Ten, Big 12, and the ACC. Back in December, the two schools received full control of the league's decision-making after settling a legal dispute with the 10 other member schools. The Pac-12 last week announced that it was parting ways with longtime Commissioner George Kliavkoff, who took over as commissioner back in May of 2021. So good history there, and they move forward under the leadership of Teresa Gould, the first ever woman Power 5 commissioner in college athletics history. Shohei Ohtani hit a towering home run in his first batting practice against live pitching since he underwent reconstructive elbow surgery, which is another step toward him playing in the Dodgers season opening series against the Padres in Seoul, South Korea. And again, big-time slug there and a towering home run in the first batting practice. Ohtani first faced Dodgers right-hander Ryan Brazier and then right-hander Blake Trinan, against whom he fouled the ball off his foot and howled in pain. Recovered in plenty of time for the at-bat against Firestone, in which he ended up firing off that big home run. But Ohtani, his bat welcome there in L.A., and the new chapter begins for Shohei Ohtani. For the college football fans out there, you'll be happy to know the situation concerning the upcoming expansion of the college football playoff is starting to get a little bit more clear and, frankly, a little bit more fun. The College Football Board of Managers unanimously approved a model that will guarantee the 5 highest-ranked conference champions inclusion into the expanded 12-team field this fall, along with the next 7 highest-ranked teams. That's according to the College Football Playoff announcement earlier today. After months of delay at the behest of the dwindling Pac-12, the decision was made this morning in a virtual meeting of the 10 FBS commissioners and the Notre Dame president, Reverend John Jenkins. The vote had to be unanimous for the 5+7 format to be approved, and the Pac-12 had either previously abstained or asked for a delay as it worked on determining the future of its future conference following sweeping conference realignment. Washington State President Kirk Schultz, who represents the Pac-12 on the board, told ESPN last week he would confer with Oregon State president and be quote-unquote ready to vote today. And it appears he was ready to vote, as the Pac-12 and Mountain West have agreed to a temporary scheduling partnership in which Oregon State and Washington State will play at least 6 Mountain West opponents coming up in 2024. And we'll see how this plays out because, again, here is the overall verbiage and the overall lingo here. It is the 5 highest-ranked conference champions, automatic inclusion in the expanded 12-team field, and the remaining 7 highest-ranked teams. So if Washington State or Oregon State happens to be pretty darn good, even though they have a 2-member conference, they've agreed to that scheduling alliance with the Mountain West, I would venture a guess that things will be pretty decently being able to capitalize off of for Washington State and Oregon State to get into the college football playoff than the alternative of them being left out. It's the top 5 highest ranked conference champions. And the other thing that this does, if Washington State or Oregon State or both stumble this year and they're not in the top 25, or maybe they're in the low 20s, high 20s of the rankings, this clearly opens the door for some smaller school from the American, from Conference USA, from the Sun Belt, or elsewhere to have a seat at the table, and that is the exact point of why we're doing this. The 5 highest-rated conference champions and then 7 at-large bids to the next teams down the line. You gotta love this. We're going to get 3 or 4 teams from the SEC, 3 or 4 teams from the Big Ten, and we'll wait and see. It's going to be a slice of the pie depending upon each year. Back and forth they go. But I'm already looking forward to this because of that verbiage of the top 5 highest ranked conference champions, which could come from the Pac-12, could come from the MAC, could come from the Conference USA, American Conference, whatever it might be. Going to be pretty darn cool to get this top team from the smaller schools across our nation a seat at the table finally, in something that only Cincinnati has been able to do in the current model of 4 teams. It's going to be 12 moving forward. Sign me up for expansion there. And lastly, got to deliver some sort of bad news today, and that comes from St. John's coach Rick Pitino, saying yesterday that he stands by the criticism he leveled at his team Sunday night after his team blew a 19-point first-half lead in a loss to Seton Hall. The Hall of Fame coach in his first season at St. John's didn't hold back during a post-game news conference in which he questioned his players' toughness and mentioned several by name while describing their athletic shortcomings. He said via quote, "Our lateral quickness and our toughness is just something I've never witnessed in all my years of coaching. We are so non-athletic that we can't guard anybody. without fouling. But Pitino, speaking to Newsday on yesterday on Monday, insisted that he, quote, truly wasn't ripping anybody. I was pointing out exactly in a monotone voice why we lost. I'm not always calm, and certainly not when I rip someone. I was not ripping anybody. I sometimes want my players to hear my words and read my words. That was my intention on Sunday. You can fault Rick Pitino for a lot of things, but at least he's pretty darn honest, and he is who he is. But pretty darn harsh critiques of the guys in his locker room. That would be a tough dude to play for these days, but he's a pretty darn good basketball coach with a lot of accomplishments to his name. That's the ugly of today's Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and that is our show. We'll say so long. Do it tomorrow, 11 to 1 here when the next edition of Overtime rolls around right here on ESPN 102.3 AM 1000 KSOO.